99% of guys treat brake barrels like dusty basement relics. They think a spring piston is just a cheap toy for bouncing lead off tin cans. And that mindset is costing them serious off-grid hunting capability. You think a Springer is just for teaching your kid the fundamentals? You have never felt the massive kinetic energy these modern rigs are pushing downrange. Look, the PCP world is great, but it has turned a lot of shooters into total slaves. Slaves to expensive carbon fiber tanks, loud compressors, and blown O-rings. When you are miles deep in the backcountry, all that fancy electronic regulation means absolutely nothing. Here is the deal. At the 2026 SHOT Show, the industry proved they are done treating Springers like entry-level novelties. We are talking aerospace polymers, Inertia-Fed magazines, and enough foot-pounds of energy to humanely dispatch predators without ever needing an external air supply. Starting us off at number 7 is the massive Hatsan Mod 135 Vortex. When you want to push serious kinetic energy without messing with high pressure pumps, this Turkish beast answers the call. It throws 30 cal pellets downrange with absolute authority. You are looking at generating right around 30 foot-pounds of energy at the muzzle. That is enough devastating power to neutralize raccoons or heavy-bodied woodchucks at 40 yards without a second thought. Now let us look under the hood at the power plant. The real engine here is their proprietary Vortex gas piston system. Instead of a traditional coiled steel spring that violently twists the entire rifle when you pull the trigger, this utilizes a completely sealed cylinder of nitrogen gas. This mechanism delivers a perfectly linear forward stroke. It completely eliminates the harsh rotational torque and spring buzz that usually destroys optical sights on Magnum brake barrels, giving you a massive upgrade for consistent follow-through. The firing sequence is incredibly distinct once you get it shouldered. The Quattro trigger breaks cleanly. It snaps like a frozen pine branch in the dead of winter. When it sends that heavy lead flying, the report sounds exactly like a heavy framing hammer striking a thick wooden beam. I know the traditional firearm guys will doubt this kind of raw power comes from a brake barrel. Sound off below in the comments if you have personally dropped game with a 30 cal Springer. But here is the deal breaker you need to know before it sets you back about $300. The ergonomics are a serious letdown straight out of the box. The synthetic stock feels incredibly hollow and cheap against your cheek. It resonates that recoil right into your jawbone on every single shot. If you do not master the artillery hold with this specific stock, this rig will just spray lead all over the paper. Stepping up the rate of fire, we have the Gamo Swarm Magnum Gen 3i. When you need fast follow-up shots on a group of skunks without taking your eye off the optic, this Spanish-built repeater completely changes the game. It pushes 22 caliber pellets with blistering velocity, generating right around 26 foot-pounds of energy for a clean takedown. Now, let us look at the real engineering marvel on this rig. The Inertia-Fed 10-shot magazine system. Instead of relying on a fragile clock spring that you have to manually wind up under tension, this system uses the actual recoil pulse of the gas piston firing cycle to rotate the internal drum. That means the mechanism physically cannot double feed a pellet into the breech, totally saving you from a catastrophic barrel jam when you are rushing a shot in the woods. Pulling the custom action trigger on this setup is definitely a unique experience. Honestly, the second stage rolls a bit heavy. It feels like dragging a heavy cinder block across a gravel driveway before it finally lets go. But when that sear trips, the report cracks exactly like a high-voltage bullwhip echoing through a dense canyon. Look, here is the ugly truth about this specific platform. The build quality on the proprietary magazine housing is a massive aesthetic and structural flaw. It is entirely made of rigid polymer that feels extremely flimsy, and if you bump that loading tower hard against a tree stand, it is going to snap right off and leave you with a single-shot rifle. For this kind of multi-shot capability, it sets you back about $320. Now we get into the serious hunting rigs. Stepping into the number 5 spot is the legendary Diana 54 Airking Pro. When you absolutely need to thread the needle on a crow at 50 yards, this German-engineered masterpiece is a true tack driver. It spits .22 caliber lead with surgical precision, generating a very respectable 20 foot-pounds of energy. It is not the most powerful on this list, but the downrange performance is undeniable. Let us talk about exactly why this rifle prints one-hole groups, while other Magnums scatter pellets everywhere. The secret is the internal recoil sled system. Instead of the stock absorbing the massive two-way jolt of the heavy mainspring, the entire barreled action actually slides backward inside the stock on a set of steel rails during the firing cycle. This completely isolates your shoulder and the optic from the destructive spring buzz, allowing the pellet to exit the muzzle before the recoil ever affects your point of aim. When you pull through the incredibly crisp T06 trigger, it breaks like snapping a thin glass rod under your boot. The firing cycle is remarkably smooth, and the report sounds like a heavy textbook slamming flat onto a hardwood floor. Honestly, this is a phenomenal piece of precision engineering, but wait until you see the absolute slug-slinging monster at number 1. It makes even this German beauty look like a basement toy. Listen, here is the real pain point you have to swallow before you commit to this platform. The financial damage to your wallet is severe, and it does not stop at the checkout counter. This rifle requires incredibly specific, ultra-heavy-duty scope mounts, because that sliding action will shear the crosspins right off a cheap set of rings. By the time you buy the specialized mounting hardware and the rifle itself, you're dropping well over $800 just to get started. Stepping up the power, we have the legendary Weihrauch HW80SL taking the number 4 spot. This German-engineered brute is built for absolute off-grid survival and heavy-duty use. It pushes .22 caliber pellets with incredible authority, delivering exactly 22 foot-pounds of kinetic energy on target. You are looking at a heavy 10-pound solid steel and walnut powerhouse that needs absolutely zero external air tanks to neutralize a stubborn raccoon at close range. Let us crack open the action and look at the real secret behind this workhorse. The massive 30mm compression chamber paired with the wedge lock breech system. Instead of a cheap ball detent that wears out and causes barrel droop over time, this mechanism uses a solid steel chisel lock that securely snaps the barrel back into the exact same alignment every single time you cock it. That means your optical sight stays perfectly zeroed, giving you immense confidence when you are dragging this heavy rig through thick brush. Squeezing the 2-stage record trigger is a legendary experience. It snaps exactly like a crisp glass icicle breaking under tension. The firing cycle is a massive forward thump, and the muzzle report sounds like a thick oak door slamming shut in an empty concrete hallway. I challenge any of the traditional powder burner guys to take this out into the field. Sound off below in the comments if you have ever tried hauling a heavy Magnum Springer through the woods all day. But here is the absolute truth about this beautiful piece of steel that sets you back about $600. It is incredibly picky about its diet, making it a massive performance quirk out in the field. This barrel absolutely hates lightweight alloy ammunition. and will throw those pellets all over the paper in wide, unpredictable spirals. If you do not feed it strictly premium, ultra-heavy lead, this expensive rifle will shoot worse than a bargain bin plinker. Entering the elite tier, we are looking at the Benjamin Trail NPXL Magnum, taking the number 3 spot. When you need to push absolute sledgehammer force on heavy-bodied pests, this American classic delivers without question. Chucking 22 caliber hollow points downrange, it easily generates roughly 25 foot-pounds of energy at the muzzle. You are getting immense power to humanely dispatch groundhogs at 50 yards without dealing with a single fragile air seal. Under the shroud, the real driver here is the overboard nitro gas ram system. Instead of relying on a standard diameter air strut, this mechanism uses a massive, oversized cylinder filled with pressurized nitrogen that acts directly on the heavy steel piston. This drastically reduces the lock time, the fraction of a second between pulling the trigger and the pellet leaving the barrel. That rapid forward expansion means the projectile clears the muzzle before your own shoulder movement can throw off the shot, making it a surprisingly accurate heavy hitter out in the woods. Squeezing the 2-stage trigger on this rig is definitely a distinct feeling. It breaks exactly like snapping a frozen carrot in half. The firing cycle is a massive, blunt shove rearward into your shoulder. When it sends lead flying, the report sounds exactly like a heavy leather medicine ball slamming violently into a dense gym mat. Look, here is the brutal reality you have to face if you want to run this Magnum powerhouse. The cocking stroke is an absolute ergonomic nightmare that will wear your arm out incredibly fast in the field. You have to physically pull down that heavy bull barrel with over 40 pounds of sustained physical force just to lock the sear for a single shot, which makes rapid follow-ups nearly impossible from a seated blind. For this level of raw, unrefined kinetic energy, the street price is going to run you right around $350. Closer to the crown, we are looking at the absolute precision instrument known as the Air Arms TX200, taking the number 2 spot. When you are demanding surgical accuracy to dispatch squirrels at 60 yards, this gorgeous underlever delivers. It throws 22 caliber pellets downrange with unbelievable consistency. You are getting roughly 16 foot-pounds of kinetic energy, which proves you do not need raw Magnum power when your shot placement is absolutely perfect. Looking closely at the architecture, the real advantage here is the fixed barrel underlever design paired with a sliding compression chamber. Instead of breaking the actual barrel to cock the rifle, which eventually causes lockup wear and accuracy droop over time, the heavy solid steel barrel never moves. You pull a separate lever underneath that slides the entire internal breech block backward to expose the loading port. That means the physical relationship between your optic and the bore remains absolutely rigid forever, delivering a level of precision that makes you forget about external air supplies. Easing into the match-grade trigger, it breaks incredibly clean, snapping exactly like a thin sheet of brittle ice, cracking under a heavy winter boot. The firing sequence is remarkably refined with minimal vibration. When it sends that lead flying, the muzzle report sounds exactly like a heavy rubber mallet striking a solid wooden telephone pole. Listen, here is the massive field annoyance you have to deal with on this platform. The internal bear trap safety mechanism is incredibly loud and clunky by design. It clicks violently like a heavy ratcheting socket wrench every single time you cock the lever, completely giving away your position to wary game before you even get a chance to load a pellet. For this level of pristine accuracy, the damage to your wallet is roughly $800. Entering the number 1 spot, we have the undisputed king of the mountain, the Weihrauch HW97K. Look, this German-engineered masterpiece takes the throne because it gives you the pristine surgical accuracy of the air arms at number 2, but with a refined balance and robust build quality that puts the Diana Airking at number 5 to absolute shame. It spits .22 caliber lead with absolute consistency, delivering exactly 15 foot-pounds of energy. You do not need massive Magnum output when you can effortlessly neutralize a ground squirrel at 60 yards with a single, perfectly placed shot. Now we have to talk about the internal architecture that makes this rifle an absolute legend among off-grid hunters. The real advantage is the fixed barrel underlever system paired with a factory-honed compression tube and a perfectly fitted synthetic piston seal. Instead of relying on a standard cheap plastic seal that allows air to bleed off and fluctuate during the forward stroke, this mechanism completely traps the compressed air column, generating a perfectly consistent blast behind the projectile. That precise air delivery means your extreme spread on velocity is practically zero, making it a true tack driver without ever touching an expensive compressor. Shouldering this solid wood and steel platform is a massive confidence booster when you are staring down a wary target. Easing back on the legendary 2-stage record trigger is an experience. It breaks exactly like a dry saltine cracker snapping under a heavy steel rolling pin. The firing cycle is a tight, rapid thump with absolutely zero annoying spring vibration. When that sear trips, the muzzle report sounds exactly like a heavy dead blow hammer striking a thick rubber tire inside a closed garage. Listen, this is not a disposable piece of plastic you pick up on a whim. This is an heirloom quality hunting rig, built to outlast you and your grandkids in the worst conditions. If you want the absolute best self-contained power plant on the market, you're going to be handing over right around $700. Honestly, it is worth every single penny when you never have to worry about regulator creep, dead batteries, or leaking air tanks out in the field. Look, the industry wants you constantly buying carbon fiber air tanks and expensive fill probes. They want you completely reliant on external power sources just to take down a squirrel. But these brake barrels prove you can still handle serious pest control with nothing but muscle and heavy lead. You do not need a $3,000 setup to get the job done deep in the woods. Every single rig on this list gives you total off-grid independence. It is just you, the rifle, and the raw fundamentals of marksmanship. Stop chasing the electronic regulator hype and get back to what actually works when the power goes out. If you want the raw truth without the marketing fluff, lock it in right here.